Okay, I'm going to do a little update and talk about it. If you look at this headline, now I hope you can see it. Let me see. Is it seeing it? Okay. Now, I'm a newsreader, and I commented, this is like the live update. The Kohler Times falsely reported in the headline that Judge Guy Williams was found guilty on one charge, which is false. Now, is that a typo in the bold headline? I don't think so. Why? As a newsreader over many years, one of the tactics that the media uses, we'll comment a little why I know it's not a typo. One of the tactics that the media has used over the years is in the headlines, they will sometimes put the actual opposite of what's in the body of the story. Because they know, through polling and all, many people just look at a headline and they don't read the article. And there's been multiple ones, both in the national media and wherever you live. It's a common thing. And I've read articles like that over the years where headline said something and I read the article was the opposite. So it's sort of a tactic. Why do you think they lied? The Kohler Times, which is not the first or last time. The case that I spoke about on Judge Guy Williams was two felony charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, which I've commented on. If you point a weapon, the charge is aggravated assault. Just the pointing of a weapon is considered actual assault. And oftentimes, the actual murder of an innocent victim is either not considered anything or a lesser thing in the end. Not in every case, but in some cases. Now, why do I think either way they lied? Now, in the body of the article, they reported correctly. And in the online Kohler Times, before I made this, they have not posted a correction. They don't have to, because in the body of the article, they're saying he's not guilty on one charge, and then they had a hung jury on the second charge, which caused there to be a mistrial. But this is like a tactic they do. Now, tomorrow there might be a correction. Oftentimes, when newspapers make a blunder, particularly on purpose, they have a small font. New York Times, many papers do this. They have a small fine print correction, knowing that most people will never see it. There's a lot of old elderly people in our community as well as yours. A lot of them are not online. But I checked online, Kohler Times, no correction. It's possible that they did it because do I think that District Attorney Mark Gonzalez did wrong or targeted Judge Williams? No, I do not think that. Because Judge Williams had maybe a history of these types of related aggressive drivers, guns, because that came out in the media, and there was somewhat of a debate because the prosecution basically said, look, we're going to bring all these things up. And even the defense attorney, I think it's Terry Shamsey, used to be involved politically, county judge or whatever. But the defense attorney, and as I followed the case, kind of said, look, you got all these other things, which Judge Williams did have a history of stuff like that. And the presiding judge said, well, we'll deal with that when it comes up. And from what I understand, that the record of like a history of the aggressive driving and all this from Judge Williams, who was on the defendant, that would only come up if they found him guilty. Then they would see it. And it looks as if, unless Mr. Gonzalez decides to, the DA, unless he decides to retry the judge, of course the jurors, they would have never heard it, and they haven't, as far as we know, the history. So maybe the Kohler Times simply felt I seen them do something like that before on something else, which was actually a fairly serious domestic abuse thing. And when I read the article, it had the victim, a woman that was killed in a domestic abuse thing, which was serious. There was a few tragic cases the last few years. And I remember when I read the article in the Kohler Times, they had one of the family members of the victim stating that the officers did a fine job. And I knew that the family member of the victim didn't feel that way because I followed that particular case. And I thought, oh, somebody's putting it in there. Then the next day or so, the former editor or top lady at the Kohler Times, Libby Avert, she wrote a scathing piece. She didn't call out whatever reporter manipulated, but she wrote a scathing piece about domestic abuse and her criticisms at CCPD. So people can manipulate many things. Now, those of you that see this little update, in a few hours, these go up on Facebook. Then you'll see it in a little while on YouTube and 6 or 7 other sites that I share the update. So for those that don't look on my Facebook page, I actually posted today's Sunday sermon, quote, live to Facebook right after I made it at the Corpus Christi Cathedral. So those who want to see the teaching post for the Sunday message, which I just made the video today, Palm Sunday, you can go to my Facebook page and you'll see I have the date and Palm Sunday message. So if you want to see it ahead of time, I realize I make a lot of videos and it's hard to, I don't watch videos. I finish reviewing mine and I go 10 minutes, write the notes, I want to finish it. Okay. Tonight, being I'm discussing a little media, tonight you're going to have, I believe, the broadcast interview of Stormy Daniels, porn star Trump had allegedly had an affair with, probably did. And I think it's Anderson Cooper, but he had also done one this week. I'm a newsreader. I saw something last week that Anderson Cooper broke up with his longtime boyfriend. Now, I have friends that are gay and that are in different lifestyles. The way I speak and teach scripture, they know my position on things. But I have never, because on the street sometimes people will say, oh, so-and-so's this or that. But I have never treated any of the gay guys on the street, there's a few, I have never treated them different. They're always welcome to, be part of whether I'm teaching something. But in the interview that Anderson Cooper did with another Playmate model that Mr. Trump allegedly had an affair with, I believe he did. He asked in that interview, he said, I know this is a personal question. Now understand, these are so-called consensual affairs. None of these women are claiming any illegal sexual advances by Mr. Trump. He said, did he use protection or not? He's asking, can you tell us, I'll use the correct term. He's basically saying, can you tell us if he put a condom on his penis when he did this, or whether he did not put a condom on? That's what he's getting out there for the wife to hear, for Melania to hear. How would Mr. Cooper feel when the media reported he broke up with his longtime male lover? If we asked, which we wouldn't ask, did you penetrate your male lover in the anal, or did he penetrate you? There would be outrage in the country, simply because unless you're talking about someone accusing Mr. Anderson or Mr. Trump of rape or whatever, those questions should never be put to the media. And that was the top thing. And tonight will be the interview. And it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful that that's what the media is today. I wanted you to see that bold headline. And the Sunday paper is the biggest selling paper in most of newspaper circulations. Corpus Christi, that's the Sunday paper. And they got it out there in bold headlines. Judge Guy Williams found guilty. Now, I'm sure Mr. Williams or his attorney probably contacted, and maybe they'll say, we'll write a correction. But I don't think that was a mistake. Because in our community, this particular trial is, somewhat of a big thing, because it's a judge that was sitting on the bench. Then he finally really had to step down. So today, we do remember Palm Sunday, though I already taught the message on it. And the Christian community, hopefully, will join together in unity. In unity. I understand that there are political biases in a lot of places, and a lot of people make good arguments. And some of the conversation in the country about gun violence, it's also, in Mr. Williams' case, all of the maybe past incidents of road rage or involving weapon, the jury didn't hear any of that. And I find it also interesting that in some cases where maybe somebody kills a human being, and then it happens again, possibly, or even the third time, and oftentimes none of that is admitted as evidence until they only look at the last case. But I think if you have a history of multiple killings or multiple road rage or multiple, I don't think Mr. Mark Gonzalez did wrong in bringing Judge Williams to trial on this. I think Judge Williams took a very big risk by taking it to trial, because it was an ingenious defense to claim that the weapon was not loaded. I don't believe it was not loaded. And it would be wrong for any defendant to lie to get off. But the other thing, once you bring something like that up in your defense, which Mr. Williams did, then it would be important to know beyond a shadow of a doubt whether or not that weapon was loaded. And so that was like a defense technique, if you will. And that had to raise doubt. In a lot of cases where kids are caught with guns, they're felons, they shouldn't have them or whatever, you hardly ever hear the defense. The weapon that the person said I pointed, the defendant says it was not loaded. Even if he would say that on the stand, I'm not sure if he testified in his own behalf. But that's just an example of media, okay? That I wanted you to see, the local people that get a chance to watch these. You just read the Caller Times. Front page, bold headlines. Judge Williams found guilty. Sometimes the media does things just because they want to. They have whatever agenda they have, and they want to stick it to somebody. I would never justify any interview with a consensual adult, whether that person is heterosexual or homosexual, and then to just have an interview and ask the male lover, did Mr. Anderson Cooper penetrate you anally, or that would be offensive, and I wouldn't do it. I mention it so you could just get a glimpse of what Mr. Cooper did. And the woman, I forget her name, it wasn't the Stormy Daniels one. The woman, you could see, I saw clips of it watching the news, you could see she was offended. And according to her, testimony, it seems like she probably, was really in love with Trump, or affairs, or, things that happen in life. But the only reason that would even be out there is to degrade Melania Trump, to disgrace her, because I've saw multiple. So they're out, and whether you're the Caller Times, you're NBC, you have a history of that, and the public just does not view you anymore in a serious way. Okay, so this is a little news update. I mentioned if I see the beautiful dog, my daughter has a neighbor who's a CCPD officer, and they have a beautiful German Shepherd. And sometimes the German Shepherd, it's kind of like the country here, she'll run up to me and do this walk with me. And then a few weeks ago, my daughter said she got lost, and then maybe somebody had found her and took her. And I felt sad. I said, oh, Valentine. And then when I came up the other day, she ran up to me. Somebody found Valentine, beautiful German Shepherd, and returned her. And so I was just playing with her just now. And I don't know if I see her. Valentine! Valentine!